Hello folks and welcome to Paddock Pass from day 2 of the final pre-season test for 2017. Cars shooting around the track, as you can see at the moment. Been out on track this morning and my word, they're impressive. Through the medium high-speed corners, they are bolted. It's, 2017 is going to be a very impressive year. As Valtteri Bottas flies around, he's just put in the fastest time this morning. Mercedes starting to show a little bit more of their hand. Obviously, Valtteri has changed teams. He's not the only driver to change teams this season. One of those who's also rapidly going around the circuit at the moment, is Nico Hülkenberg. So we are going to catch up with him at lunchtime just to see how he's settling in at Renault. Just 2 days of testing left. How far through the programme? 2.5. How far through the programme are you compared to where you wanted to be when testing began?
Not quite where we wanted to be. A little bit behind, to be honest. But that's why we're here. It's called winter testing, and so you start working, and sometimes you run into some problems and trouble, and you have to fix it, and then you get on with it again. But I think overall, I think the situation is not super bad. We're working away, collecting a lot of data, learning more and more, so it's okay so far.
I guess you learn the most when you've got difficulties placed in front of you. What have you learned about the team in the few days that you've been running with them already, and how much positivity does that give you for the season moving forward?
Well, it's just a matter of working together with the new team, working together with obviously new people. That means at the same time, and the more you work together, the more you get to know each other, and things start to bed in a little bit. But still early days, but there's no big headaches from my side on that side.
How much promise do you think there is in this car?
I think there is good promise. I think let's call it the base is good. It's certainly a base where I think we can, if we put in the right development, that we can build on and make a fast car out of it.
Now, earlier today, I went out on track to take a look at the cars in anger as they toured around the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya. And I've got to say, for me, they look incredible. We started off on the main straight, and you can only tell so much from them in the straight line. But the biggest thing, and the really impressive thing, is how late they are braking. Well, not even braking, down into turn one. They're almost just lifting, downshifting, and throwing it in. There's an incredibly quick change of direction then into turn 2 before they're full throttle all the way around turn 3. And it's there that you get an impression really of why the guys have had to do as much training as they have over the winter, why they've had to put on all the muscle, and why they've had to build up their necks just to hold the thing in through that flat-out right-hander. And then watching them through the really sort of fast corners, the medium to high-speed corners, it gives you a real impression of how fast these cars are going to be and how bolted to the circuit they are. Up through turn 9, that fast right-hander where we saw a couple of guys lose it on exit last week. Desperately impressive watching the cars go through there. And I think we're really going to to paraphrase what Nico Rosberg, reigning world champion, said when he came to testing last week, these cars are going to make the drivers gladiators once again, and I think that's a really great representation of how hard they are to drive. We can't really tell much from the testing times at the moment, but from what I've seen trackside, the cars that look very much together, I think the Williams looks fantastic. Felipe Massa putting in a huge number of laps yesterday and today, showing that while the car is fast, it's also incredibly reliable. The same is true for the Mercedes, for the world champions. Valtteri Bottas looking absolutely brilliant in that. The Ferrari I didn't see much of today. They had a bit of a problem this morning, didn't get out on track much, but what I did see, the car looks incredible. Also, the Haas looks like a very dependable, reliable car. I think that the ones who are really struggling, obviously, McLaren, the car is not fast, we know that. It is not reliable, we know that. And watching it going through the medium speed corners, really Fernando Alonso having a fight with it. It's snapping away at him, and he just doesn't look comfortable in it at all. Also, I'm afraid the Sauber doesn't look like a very happy car either. These guys down at Renault, they look like they've got a good car underneath them, and certainly from what Nico Hülkenberg was just saying, certainly a good base from which to go forward this season. The big question, though, obviously, is over Red Bull Racing. We know the Ferrari is quick when it's running. We know the Mercedes is quick when it's running. But there's a feeling in this paddock that we haven't quite seen everything yet from Red Bull. Do they still have an ace to play? One man who's been driving that car today is Max Verstappen. It seemed like a race sim this afternoon that stopped early. Was there anything wrong with the car, or did you just run out of fuel?
Unfortunately, I didn't run out of fuel. No, we were 2 laps short of the race distance. So I think we got a lot of data. Unfortunately, we had to stop. I think it was a similar issue as what made us stop this morning. But in one way, I'm also quite confident because the Renault boys, I think they already have some plans in place to change that for Melbourne anyway. So it should be all right.
Some strong words already out of Dr. Marco about Renault's performance this year. Is it something that's troubling you?
I always stay very positive and I try not to think about it too much. That's what testing is for. To challenge all the parts and then see, how good they are and where you can improve. So for sure, I think today we learned a lot again. So that's positive for the future.
It's always impossible at this time of year to say where you are compared to everybody else. But with Daniel saying yesterday, you don't have 2 seconds in your pocket. Is this car going to be good enough, do you think, to compete for wins this year?
Well, I think the good thing is nobody has 2 seconds in their pocket, so we'll see. I mean, it's really difficult to say, because you don't know how much fuel the other people are running, and also with the cars are still pretty new, so you can do a lot of setup changes, and suddenly you find the right one, and then you can work in that direction, and you gain even more performance. So there's still a lot of work to do because I think we haven't tested all the the available options in terms of setting up the car, but so far I think everything is going pretty well.
So Max Verstappen then seemingly unperturbed by finishing the day and the session a little bit early. He said it was a recurrence of this morning's problem. That was an MG UK problem, which saw the team have to change the power unit. And Lee, it's not the first time this week that Renault have had issues with their power unit, both here at Red Bull Racing and further down there at Renault itself. Do you think that's something the team's got to worry about, despite finishing the session 4th quickest?
I'm not sure about Red Bull. I think they're probably in pretty good shape. But what is worrying is Renault. I mean, Jolie and Palmer turned less than 30 laps today. And, I mean, when you've got 8 hours of testing and you've turned less than 30 laps, that's a big concern, I think. And given what happened yesterday, like you said.
Yeah, and obviously he ran, I think, 15 laps yesterday. So Jolien not with a lot of running at all. Things seemingly going really well for Mercedes, though. Again, Valtteri Bottas topping the times today. He spent all morning out there on track. How good does that car look out there?
Well, we've been fortunate enough to get around to a lot of the corners on the track, and I mean, it looks great everywhere. It's fast. One of the really great things about being here at testing is seeing the increased cornering speeds. That's just standing there without a stopwatch or anything to measure it, just looking trackside. But I mean, I'm very excited for Bottas. He's a nice young man. He's a terrific driver, and he's been given the opportunity of his lifetime, and he seems to be capitalising on that, making the most of it.
One guy not so young anymore, Felipe Massa, has been up towards the top of the timesheets every day. He was up towards the top again today, finishing second to Bottas, but Williams have come out and admitted, we're doing low fuel runs.
Yep. Doing low fuel runs, but I mean, I think it's good. It was nice to see Lance Stroll have a good, solid run late this afternoon, and I'm intrigued as to see that blend of youth and experience. And for Lance Stroll, who was telling us yesterday that he grew up as Michael Schumacher as his racing hero. Well, he's got a teammate who was a teammate to his racing hero. And, when you go down the list of who Felipe Massa has been teammates with, and of course he's done 250 Grand Prix, for young Lance Stroll at 18 to have Felipe, as his sounding board, bouncing board, whatever, I think that's going to be really good for him. And I haven't spoken to Felipe yet this test, but I'm intrigued to know what he thinks and how he feels about being back, mentally and with your family. You've made that commitment to walk away from the sport, and all of a sudden you're back and you're up at the top of the timesheets and churning out massive amounts of laps. Like I think yesterday, didn't he do 160 odd or something like that? So it's been a really good start. It's been a really good test for him.
The guy who did as many laps as Felipe yesterday was Sebastian Vettel. Not such a good day for Ferrari today. If we go through the times, Bottas on top, 119.3, which I think is the fastest lap we've ever seen around this configuration of the circuit. Then it's Massa, 0.1 back. Then a second back, Kimi Räikkönen in third place, but he did have a spin at the end of the day, lost it through turn 3. And while the Ferrari does look good, it has occasion to look a bit twitchy around the track too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely does. Just something that triggered a thought was you listing those times there. Last year's pole position here with Lewis Hamilton was a 1:22 even. They're already down into the 1:18s, as you mentioned. Yeah. Can you imagine if they get down to the 1:17s or even a 1:18 even? Yeah. 4 seconds a lap faster within the space of a year. I mean, that speaks volumes as to these new cars.
And it's cold. at the moment. It's not as warm as we get when we're here for the race.
Just jumping back to your point on Ferrari, that did look a little bit nervous, but I think generally it looks better. I mean, just everything, the whole package, and even people, up and down the lane are saying, I think Ferrari are going to be closer, because that's the question we all ask ourselves, right? Who's going to be the closest to Mercedes-AMG Petronas? So I think it's off to a decent start for Ferrari.
One team we know is not going to be up there is McLaren. Once again, another troubling day for them. Limited running. The team said that was part of the plan, one would imagine, so they don't have to try and change the power unit that's causing them so much problems. How much trouble do you think McLaren are in?
Well, I'm really disheartened by this story, because we were here for their first hybrid, their first iteration of their hybrid, to watch that. I don't think they could complete 6 straight laps, and it was a really frustrating, worrying start. And then we've lived through, and as you folks have watched, the turnaround. Last year was their best year, but when you think about the enormous amount of money that Honda has invested and that McLaren's had to find, and that they've invested human resource-wise and money, at the end of 2 years, Honda's got a 10th place in the championship to show. That's a lot of money for a 10th place finish. And here they are in year number 3 of this hybrid era. And it's like, what have you got to show for it? And again, we're testing, and there's nothing. It doesn't seem like there's anything to get too excited about. The team has come out and said, we don't have major handling issues. It's a Honda power unit issue. So already I don't know, for me it seems like there's a division. Last year it seemed like they were more cohesive, and they were going in the right direction. And Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso got into Q3, several times. Fernando was regularly finishing in the top, say, 6 or 8, and that's how he got his 10th place championship. But it seemed like a more cohesive unit last year. This year it seems, if they're saying, if Eric Boulier and the team are happy to say that publicly, like to members of the media, what's really going on behind closed doors?
It's funny, isn't it? Because Honda has always been better in Formula One, has achieved more success as a engine provider, or a power unit provider, as it would be termed now, rather than a team in its own right. As a team in its own right, only have had 3 victories. But as an engine provider, it always seemed to get the job done. And yet now, in its current iteration, it comes back in. The power unit wasn't up to scratch. Over this winter, everybody's been given the opportunity to completely go out, redesign their power units from what they've learned over the last 2 seasons. Everybody's come back with better, more efficient units, except Honda, who are now going through exactly the same issues they did when that power unit first launched. I mean, how long do you think they've got before that relationship is soured irretrievably?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think long, because you can't. I mean, you've got to get results. You've got to get return on that investment, and those results aren't coming. And what are we going to be doing? Are we going to be standing here in another 2 years' time saying, well, it's year number 5 now of their hybrid project, and there's still, and when you look at the team, it's been years since they've had a podium, years since they've had a win. I mean, there are young staff members at McLaren who have never experienced a podium celebration, when you think about it.
We were looking at the stats, weren't we? And for McLaren, it was 2014 for a podium.
Yep.
In Australia.
That was in Australia, so that's 3 years ago now.
For a Constructors' Championship, we're looking back at 1998.
I know.
Which is crazy.
I know.
And for Honda themselves to have achieved a podium, it's 2006.
And look, when you walk down pit lane and McLaren are further towards pit out, I don't know, this is just my take, there's no pit gantry up there. They're not practicing any pit stops. There's unbranded shields blocking the garage. There's no pit wall, where the engineers sit. To me, it just doesn't look, and it doesn't feel like we've come to know McLaren over all these decades. That might be a silly, incorrect observation, but I was talking to Steve Matchett and David Hobbs about it, and David drove for McLaren, and he kind of feels the same way. So I hope that means nothing and they turn it around. But it seems to be a pretty shaky start to the new season.
Let's finish this on a positive note, though. Who's impressed you? Not just from their pit gantry and the way that they're set up in the pit lane, but from looking at them out on track, the lap times you've seen turning, and I get reliability and the sheer number of laps that they've turned out over these past few days.
Bottas and Ricciardo. But I don't mean to not say anything about Lewis Hamilton or Vettel or Raikkonen, but just those guys have impressed me so far. But on a big general scale, just everything. I'm excited about 2017 Formula One. The cars look great, with the wider tyres, and they look more together, and they look tougher, and they look more like race cars. There's a lot of excitement up and down the pit lane in the paddock that we're still not there noise level wise. We're not back to the good old days, but the cars are a little bit louder. They sound somewhat better. And I just think there's a lot of positives to look forward to.
They do look fantastic. Lee, thanks for your insight as always. We've got 2 days of testing left before that's it, until we get to Australia. Can't wait to see how this finishes up, but we'll catch up with you more towards the end of the week, mate. Thanks for it. And that's it from Paddock Pass, and we'll be back with you tomorrow when Steve Matchett will come and give us hopefully some technical insights. Until then, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.